Silver is only running on one of three cylinders, and the only cylinder that's running is the big whales, or those that are stacking silver in New York. That's because the silver supplies in New York on COMEX keep climbing and they do not stop. And the only way that silver supplies are going down in the ETF, 17 million ounces have been drained from SLV over the past 3 days. The only way that happens is if some whales are taking silver out of the ETF because of lack of demand from retail that don't want to buy the ETF because they're not really paying attention. And why aren't they paying attention? Because the AI bubble and all the other bubbles are still kind of bubbly, and they still look at their portfolios and they say, wow, I can buy so much with all these amount of dollars in my portfolios. But once the silver to S&P 500 ratio starts to climb or fall, if you have it the other way, basically once the Dow and the S&P get cheaper in terms of silver noticeably, then you'll start to see people panic out of mainstream stocks and bubble stocks and go into gold and silver. That hasn't even started yet. We have a long way to go. But if we go to the COMEX, what is going on with COMEX silver? This is the silver supply going back to 1971, looking for any kind of pattern that can explain what is going on with the silver supplies. You see here the spike since the beginning of 2024 from about 8,000 tons to now 16,543. The silver supplies in New York have basically doubled in 2 years. That's scary, and all this silver is going offline because a lot of it is going into cold storage, not for sale. There's some for sale. There is a good amount of silver for sale against contracts and the registered supplies, but a lot of it is ineligible, meaning it's not for sale. These are humongous whale stackers. We don't know exactly who they are, but they are piling up huge 5,000 ounce bars, and we don't know why. But if we look at these little rectangles, and I made them thin so you can see what exactly they are bracketing here. This is the 1980 run from the end of 1979 to the beginning of 1980. That is the big spike over here. What was happening in the silver supplies? They were kind of going up. They were going up appreciably, but nothing compared to what they are now. So there wasn't much of a move there because in 1971 or 1970, silver supplies were much higher than they were in 1979, 1980 in New York. So not that much of a correlation there. But here we see that as silver supplies were going up from about 1980 to 1993, you can see that the silver price was falling in a descending triangle from about the beginning here in 1983 to 1993. And around here is when, what's his name? Buffett, that guy, what's his name? Warren something. He stood for delivery of silver around here. And then the silver supply started draining, but there wasn't much move in the silver price. So we don't see much of a correlation between the silver price and the silver stacks in the COMEX vaults. Same thing in 2011, there wasn't much of a correlation at all. You can see here the move from 2010 to 2011 from, it looks like about $12 to $15 or whatever it was, to 50 in a matter of months. Not much movement in the silver supplies here. They went slightly down, but nothing alarming. And here is where we see what happened from 2020, from the lockdowns, those glorious medical miracles that saved all of our lives, to 2022. Silver was going down, the silver price was going down, and the silver supplies were going down. But here is something that we haven't ever seen before, and that is a doubling of the silver supply with a more than doubling of the price. So this is the first time we are seeing silver stacks move up in the COMEX and the price also go vertical with it. First time we're seeing that. What does that mean? It means something new is happening here. What is happening? Well, the dollar is collapsing, and that's going to lead to silver becoming money once again, because once credit collapses, there's no other way to exchange other than with money itself, because everything else is a derivative. But where is the demand coming from? Is it the ETFs? Not really. Here is a close-up. We're going to go into the farther out, zoomed out chart in a second, so you'll see this isn't much of a climb. It is a climb. It's not much of a climb. But you can see here, the last 3 days, we've had these 3 bars over here. If you total this up, it's about 17 million ounces in 3 days have been drained from the ETF. 17 million ounces go out of the ETF, go back into the vaults, either in London or in New York. They're able to do this because there isn't that much retail demand for SLV or other ETFs. Otherwise, they would have to stack silver in the ETF to keep it in line with the silver price. The fact that this is going down means there is less demand for ETF for retail traders because they're just not interested in silver yet because it's not going high enough fast enough, but it will. So no demand in ETFs, no demand in the physical markets for the stackers because, as I said, I just had an interview with Brian Kuzmar who said the spreads are far apart, which means there is no activity and no demand. Here I wanted to go into silver squeeze, but we can see here the ETF demand. The only movement that ever increased ETF demand substantially was silver squeeze, excluding this part over here, which was the post-lockdown frenzy for silver. That really was a huge move in the silver stacks. This is the amount of silver in the SLV ETF. It went up from about the lockdowns to about the middle of 2020. I think that's August 2020. And then it stayed kind of steady until silver squeeze and then fell. So if we look back at the 2010, 2011 rally to 50, we can see here there was a little bit of ETF demand, not that much. It was slight, it was appreciable, but it wasn't humongous. It wasn't anything like this, right? So we can see here that even the 2011 rally did not have much of an effect on the ETF demand. It had a little bit, but not that much. The only thing that had a big effect on ETF demand was silver squeeze. That was it. And here is the move from silver from about 27 to now 48. So about a doubling in the silver price. And here is the move in SLV from, what is it, 400 and maybe 40 million ounces to now 487. So about 40, 45 million ounces. That's not that much. There hasn't been much demand in SLV. So once these three cylinders get going, meaning physical markets and ETF markets and whoever's stacking in New York, who appears to be continuing to do that, imagine where the silver price will be then. It will be in the hundreds, and that could be relatively soon, which is why I shared an options play on the Endgame Investor on Substack for paid subscribers. And if you sign up, all of the new paid subscribers will also get that idea that you can still execute, though there isn't that much time left. U.S. real estate. I wanted to go into this in terms of gold because we broke a low here in terms of how many ounces of gold it takes to buy a single house. We broke below 120 ounces. I think that is the low here in 2011. This is September 2011 when gold hit a bull market top over here and then had a bear market over here. But now that is done. We hit like a triple, quadruple, whatever top here. Couldn't get through that resistance. And now we are below 120 ounces of gold per house. I expect this to go down to the 1980 level of that looks to be around 70. It's going to get lower than that in Weimar. Remember, it took about a $100 bill to buy a swanky house in Berlin. That's about 5 ounces of gold. I expect that we will go there for a time. It will not be sustainable and it will not be sustained, but for a time, you will be able to buy a nice sized house for about 5, 6, 7 ounces of silver. Exactly what it will be, it won't matter because the stackers will have a much more than that, and it won't even make a difference. What about silver? Well, that we haven't we haven't broken through the trend line yet, and we haven't hit resistance yet at about just below 5,000 ounces. Maybe that's 4,900, 4,800, something like that. But here is the trend line from 1980. We can see here we were about, what is that? Maybe 1,700 ounces, maybe 1,500 ounces in 1980. I don't know exactly what it is, but we have to break through 10,000 and get through this trend line, but we will, and we'll see this number fall faster than it will in gold, and we should break below the 1980 line here. If we do get to the Weimar area, then you should be able to buy a decent house for about 75 to 100 ounces of silver for a short period of time. At that time, you don't want to necessarily find the best deal. You just buy whatever is available because everybody needs silver, because there's no other way to divide labor, because credit doesn't work, which is why prices in silver will be so low at that time, because of the desperation for real money with which to divide labor will be in desperation levels. UK real estate, just wanted to look at that. These are all from Gold Charts or Us. UK real estate is pushing 100 ounces of gold for a house. This is the average in all UK property price. I don't know how exactly accurate these are. These are estimations, but you can see here the trend is obvious. We're going to break through 100 ounces in the UK. One more chart, UK housing in silver. You can see we broke through 10,000 ounces. We're at 9,722. And we have a trend line. I didn't actually draw it here. I think we're right on that line from 1980. If you draw a trend line here, touching the 2011 high, and then touching here, I think we're right on that trend line. And it shows how much of an idiot I am and how I'm so wrong and I don't know anything, because the daily repo volume is now over 100% of available reserves. There are about $2.966 trillion in reserves available, and there are over $3 trillion being traded in the repo markets right now every night. So that means that more dollars are being traded every night than actually exists to be traded. How is this possible? I don't know. Could be the numbers are off. Could be that something else is happening that I don't really understand yet. But you know what? Gold is at 4,000. Silver is at 48.50. When you look this good, you don't need to know anything. But anyway, more about that on the Endgame Investor on Substack, and I will try to figure out the mystery here. But either way, this is not going to continue.